Don Quixote, by Miguel de Cervantes, is a story about a man named Alonso Quixano, who, after reading too many books about chivalry, becomes obsessed with the idea of reviving the Age of Knights. He renames himself Don Quixote de la Mancha and sets off on an adventurous quest to defend the helpless, fight injustice, and win the love of a lady. The beginning. Alonso Quixano is a middle-aged gentleman from the region of La Mancha in Spain. He is obsessed with medieval tales of knights, adventures, and heroic deeds. His imagination becomes so consumed by these stories that he loses touch with reality and decides to become a knight-errant himself. He fashions an old suit of armor, takes up a lance and a sword, and renames himself Don Quixote. He even renames his old, tired horse Rocinante and chooses a peasant woman from a nearby village, Aldonza Lorenzo, to be his lady, and names her Dulcinea del Toboso, although she has no idea of his affections. Setting out on adventure. Without telling anyone, Don Quixote sets out on his first adventure. He travels through the countryside looking for wrongs to right and people to help. Early in his journey, he arrives at an inn, which he believes to be a grand castle. Mistaking the innkeeper for the lord of the castle, he asks to be knighted. Amused, the innkeeper plays along, and with a comical mock ceremony, he dubs Don Quixote a knight. From this point, Don Quixote begins a series of misadventures, misinterpreting everyday situations as grand chivalric challenges. For instance, he famously mistakes a group of windmills for giants and charges at them, only to be knocked down when his lance gets caught in one of the sails. This scene becomes one of the most iconic in literature, symbolizing Don Quixote's inability to distinguish between reality and his fantasies. Sancho Panza. After a few more failed adventures, Don Quixote realizes that he needs a squire, as all proper knights have one. He persuades a simple farmer, Sancho Panza, to join him on his quest, promising him riches and even the governorship of an island. Sancho, while skeptical, agrees to follow Don Quixote, more out of loyalty and curiosity than belief in his promises. Sancho Panza provides a humorous contrast to Don Quixote. While Don Quixote sees the world through the lens of fantasy and heroism, Sancho is grounded in reality. He often tries to warn his master when things are not as they seem, but Don Quixote's idealism usually prevails. Despite their differences, a deep friendship forms between the two. The madness continues. As Don Quixote and Sancho travel across the land, they encounter various people and situations. In each encounter, Don Quixote's delusions lead to chaos and confusion. He mistakes ordinary people for evil sorcerers, common inns for castles, and flocks of sheep for enemy armies. Yet, no matter how many times he is beaten or proven wrong, Don Quixote's belief in his quest remains unshaken. One of the more touching aspects of the story is Don Quixote's unwavering devotion to Dulcinea, his imagined lady love. He insists that all his heroic deeds are done in her honor, even though she is unaware of his existence. In reality, Dulcinea is a simple farm girl, but in Don Quixote's mind, she is a noble lady of great beauty and virtue. The friend's attempts to help. Meanwhile, Don Quixote's friends and family back in La Mancha are worried about him. His niece, housekeeper, and two close friends, the village priest and the local barber, believe that his obsession with books of chivalry has driven him mad. They decide to burn many of his books in the hopes of curing him, but this does little to deter him from his quest. Later in the story, they come up with a plan to trick Don Quixote into returning home. They stage an elaborate fake adventure, convincing him that a wicked enchanter has captured Dulcinea, and that only by returning to his village can he break the spell. Don Quixote falls for the trick, and they manage to get him back to La Mancha. However, even back home, he continues to dream of future adventures. The final adventure. Despite his many failures, Don Quixote remains determined to continue his quest. He and Sancho set out on another journey, and this time they meet the Duke and Duchess, who have heard of Don Quixote's exploits and decide to play elaborate pranks on him for their amusement. They create fake adventures, manipulate his delusions, and treat him as a source of entertainment. Yet, throughout it all, Don Quixote remains steadfast in his belief in chivalry and his role as a knight. In one of the final episodes, Don Quixote engages in a duel with a knight who claims that Dulcinea is not the most beautiful woman in the world. Defeated in the duel, Don Quixote is forced to swear that he will give up knight-errantry for a year. The end. Upon returning home, Don Quixote falls ill. During his final days, he begins to regain his sanity, realizing that his life as Don Quixote was a delusion. He renounces his chivalric fantasies and makes peace with the people he loves. However, the realization that his grand adventures were only the product of his imagination is too much for him, and he dies shortly after. Themes and legacy. At its heart, Don Quixote is a novel about the power of imagination, the conflict between idealism and reality, and the enduring nature of friendship. Cervantes blends comedy and tragedy, showing how Don Quixote's noble intentions often lead to farcical outcomes, but at the same time, his idealism and unwavering belief in doing good make him an endearing and iconic figure. Sancho Panza, who starts as a skeptical squire, grows to deeply admire his master, despite recognizing his madness. Their relationship evolves from one of practicality to one of deep mutual respect and affection. Ultimately, Don Quixote reflects on the human desire for meaning and adventure in a world that often seems indifferent. The novel's enduring popularity stems from its universal themes, its rich humor, and its deep humanity. Don Quixote's quest may have been misguided, but his spirit and determination make him one of the most beloved characters in literature.